Hello, good morning, and welcome to your Thursday edition of Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied voice, Justin, who I remembered to put in my ear today, so he won't be quite so disembodied. Good morning, everybody. Looking to see how many of you there are. We're sphinxing today. I was like, I wasn't feeling the figurehead. I'm not feeling that. This is the problem, like, with having multiple models going, is now I can be indecisive about what I want to work on. I thought about Duelist. We're so close on her, but I'm kind of enjoying Little Sphinxette, so I was like, well, we can work on Sphinxette. Or Sphinxlet, or whatever you want to call her. Although I'm noticing that the snakes on her crown are a little indistinct, and I probably should do some green work up there. But other than that, yes, good morning. Let's go to our minicam and chat while we paint. All right, so what should we do today, guys? Like, I'm kind of thinking, let's work on more of the lion colors. Do you think, let's save the jewelry for last. That way we can do some fur. And let's see, we were using rich leather with a bit of, I think I was adding some white and just a touch of yellow to it. I might have been using some lemon yellow on that. Oh, I'm dropping frames. I just heard the ting, Justin.
Let me see. I have a green bitrate meter on Twitch, and Restream has got a clean feed right now, at least. So maybe we had a hiccup.
Yeah, it looks like a few seconds ago we got 25% dropped frames.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, over the last 2 minutes. So I got the ting in my ear. Ting, ting, ting. The ting of doom is what I shall call it from now on. But yeah. So move forward cautiously. Biodegradable. It's unlikely that any paint is biodegradable, the Shadow Raven. That's why you have to take it places to have it disposed of. Because the reason for that is that it's plastic. It's resins, right? It's got acrylic, latex, vinyl, things like that, which are all modifications of plastic resins. So essentially, plastic doesn't biodegrade. So the best they can do is, at least as far as I know, the best they can do is just kind of, they throw a chemical into your paint and you take your paint in to be destroyed. That essentially makes your paint a solid plug. It solidifies everything. And then they can just throw it out. Yeah, no paint is biodegradable. If anybody claims their paint is biodegradable, they're ridiculous. If your paint was biodegradable, it would slowly wear down under the presence of microbes in the air and the UV of the sun. And, that wouldn't be very useful for paint if you think about it. So, I mean, people love things to be green, but there's just some things in our lives right now that cannot be green. Like totally green. Now, what we can find, what we can get, and this is the case in a few Reaper paints, is you can get zero VOC. So you can get environmentally friendly paints that don't... Oh, I got the Ting of Doom again.
All right. Yeah, I got another hiccup here on Restream's side. Your bitrate is plummeting and then skyrocketing again. It's unstable.
Yeah, all right. Well, keep with us, guys. Let us know if it becomes too crazy. Hey there, Jared. How's it going? But yeah, you can get zero VOC paint that has like essentially a zero environmental impact. Windsor, the company we work with for our bases does have those products. We do utilize at least one of them. The thing about that is just, making sure that that base has the right qualities that also make it a good miniatures paint. If it was archival, like, I don't know, that's a hard one, Vimanaqua. Like, okay, first of all, Vimanaqua, the problem is, if you make a paint that is biodegradable, what are you making it out of? Like, that's your first question. Like, what are you going to be able to make it out of that acts like paint? Because that's the real issue here, right? Is that paint, by its nature, is putting a very thin, plasticky coating over the surface of a thing. So you have to find some plastic that isn't plastic. And then you have to figure out if it's actually going to work as well as real paint. Like, because all of those features that we love about our paint, like its smoothness and the way it goes on and stays, its adhesion, its coverage. Like, where are you going to go for that? That's your first question. So before you can even say would it still break down if you made a biodegradable paint, first you have to ask, well, how do you even make a biodegradable paint that works for what we do? And so, unless you find a chemist that can tell you that, and believe me, I'm sure they're looking to try to find something but zero VOC is as close as you get right now to an environmentally friendly paint. Okay, D. Clearman. Yeah, well, let us know if you guys see hiccups, because I'm getting the ping of doom. I've gotten the ping of doom a couple of times. So, but yeah, so that is the first problem. Again, so you have to think of it chemically, which probably nobody else does except me. Well, yeah, exactly. So if that comes up again, Shadow Raven, I mean, you could tell them, like, having learned enough paint chemistry to be dangerous, the first question you have is not like how you protect a biodegradable paint. It's how you make one at all, and how you make one at all that has the features we need to paint miniatures. So you have to have a certain level of coverage. You have to have a certain level of viscosity. You have to have a certain level of smoothness. You have to have a certain level of adhesion, or it won't stick. Like, if you wonder if anybody would stand for putting a couple clear coats on their model every time they put on a layer of paint, I did that for a long time, and it's the reason I stopped using Vallejo. So you have that compromise. Right now, the compromise is the zero VOC paint, but I'll tell you, zero VOC brand, the paint that we have utilized, has different qualities than the paint that I use for the core of Master Series. So, good deal. So yeah, so if anybody on any stream you guys are on brings up biodegradable paint, the first question is it even possible? And if they go, of course it is, go, oh yeah, what would you use? And if you figure it out, go and make lots of money at some chemical company. Because it can't just be that it's biodegradable. It also has to be good, right? So that's the thing. That's the challenge that you have inherent in this. So yeah, Shadow Raven. Yes, you opened a can of worms, but you've got to think critically about it. You can't just say, what are the pitfalls? You've got to say, where do you even start? Is it even possible? And if it was possible, would it be a good product? Like, these are the questions that people ask when they set out to do this sort of thing. Hey, Scrying Eye. Hey, Trouble. Thank you for the resub. Good, Vimanakwa. I'm glad, because yeah, it's all critical thinking. It's all like, if I were to set out tomorrow and to try to find something that wasn't plastic to use as a foundation for a resin so that it would break down, your first challenge would be to make it good, and the second challenge would be to how do you even protect it from aging? Because the point of paint is that it's durable. The point of paint is that it lasts. People have worked for, over a century to make better paint that's non-toxic, doesn't use toxic ingredients, and that still has adhesion and durability, And so when you're going into that, hey there, thanks for the Prime sub, Squigzar, and Squiz, not Squigzar, it's Squizgar. Wow. Say that 5 times fast. Welcome, Squizgar. Welcome to the stream. Yes, you've gotten me on my soapbox. You've encountered me on my soapbox of paint chemistry. It's one of the things that makes me different from every other miniature painter on the web. I designed Reaper's Master Series paint line, and I learned a lot of paint chemistry to do it. So unlike a lot of other painters out there who might just toss ideas around, I actually know why paint works and how. And so when somebody asks me a question like Shadow Raven, who is like, biodegradable paint, I'm like, I'm going to have a far different answer than anybody else is going to have. Because first you have to find a resin that is biodegradable, and then you have to ask yourself, why am I even doing this? Like, do you honestly not want your model to last so that your grandkids can have it? If you painted something really, really good, if you painted a work of art, like some of my stuff and David's stuff is, don't you want that to still be around? Don't you want there to someday be a miniature painting museum? It's like, so that's the thing, right? That's the thing. Right, Val, maybe it can be done cheaply, but again, I'm going to ask you, will it have the qualities you need to be a good paint? Like, they're getting there, right? But then you're almost opening the door to all those plastic-eating microbes that don't exist yet, but probably will develop over the next, million years. Ah, dear. Pardon me while I mix some color. I'm going to start with rich leather. I'm going to add some white to it. I'm going to add a touch of lemon yellow to it to see if I can get a good lion color like I got on her paws before. And then we're going to kind of looking for a dark golden tan that's similar to that to start painting the lion-y bits. Well, and then the question is also, Val, I mean, first of all, you got to understand that resin itself is like, will deconstruct over time, right? Resin itself is a flawed medium in that it will slowly separate over like centuries, so our resin models, if I paint something beautiful that's a resin model today, 3 centuries from now, if somebody did have it in a museum, it would start to turn into just a ball of goo, which should make you a little sad. Well, yeah, scrying eye, right? So but the question is why, like, you've got permanency and you've got biodegradable. And if you want permanency, then why would you go biodegradable, right? Now, there's a lot of waste resin probably, and so making that biodegradable is great, but it's going to have repercussions when you want something not to degrade. So you got to find, like, the best answer is find a way to recycle it, but resin just doesn't recycle. That's the problem. It's unlike, that's why metal was a better medium for figures, and why resin is expensive, is that you trash whatever resin doesn't work, which, adds to the landfill. So these are big issues, and they're not easy answers. I mean, the best you can say is at least miniatures is a small hobby, so we're not creating that much waste. But as 3D printing gets bigger, and there I have to ask again, like, if they're creating biodegradable resins and filaments for 3D printing so that there's less waste over time, but what does that say about the goods that you're going to be creating with that? They aren't going to be very durable, right? Unless they're aiming for a biodegradable over like 200 years cycle or something. That's good to know, Hyper Buddy. Yeah, I'm certain that it's going to become interesting because of everybody's focus on recycling, because of the latest exposés. If you guys listen to some things on NPR, you'll be horrified about how companies say that they're recycling and then they don't actually have a way to recycle. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
But by the way, Miss Ann, I'm tallying basically every minute and a half.
Yeah.
We have a plummet and then basically we have a bitrate drop. So
okay.
we frame stutter every minute and a half. So it's kind of weird. It's very methodical.
Very odd. I'm not getting the ping of doom anymore, so maybe it's not stuttering quite as much. I don't know. The ping of doom has not re-happened for me. So I'm not getting any alerts from OBS right now, and I was at first. All right, that needs more yellow. So, all right, we're mixing colors here. We're trying to get a good tan. Actually, that's not too bad. I can go up and make that a little more yellow probably, but that basic tan isn't bad. So what that is mixing about 4 drops of rich leather with like a drop of the lemon yellow and a couple drops of pure white. You could use almost any yellow, although if you use a really highly pigmented one, this will shift much more yellow. You're getting a crap stream today. Oh yeah, people are paying attention to these things. Absolutely they are. But you gotta, again, and 2 years isn't bad, but, I wouldn't want a miniature that was going to start to degrade in 2 years. And it also depends on environment, I'm sure. Burying versus, soil microbes. Making it vulnerable to soil microbes may be the answer. So that if it's buried, it will slowly degrade. But again, these are the questions that you ask. And the things you have to think about are, what are your goals? And, what are your goals for the first place for the first item? Like, how durable does the item or the product need to be to fulfill its purpose? And can you do that in a biodegradable manner? And can you do it in one that's not going to be to the detriment of the product in the likely lifespan, I guess would be a good way to put it, right? I mean, we are so although I wish people would be less focused on this and more focused on the fact that, companies that are creating plastic are just creating it willy-nilly without regard for the environment. I'd much rather see people rise up and worry about that than worry about, where our 3D printing filament is, whether it's going to be biodegradable. Let's fix the problem we've got before we go off the board. But yes. So it's just the questions you have to ask, like, and I love it. I don't love it when people just like ask questions like, biodegradable paint without thinking about what's the implication of a biodegradable paint. What are you making it out of? Chemistry is a miraculous thing these days. We could do some crazy stuff. There are always repercussions. And it may be that the paint of the future is biodegradable, but just not as good as the past stuff. Like that has happened all the time, right? Like cadmium colors have great coverage, but cadmium is toxic, and so almost all paint companies now are going away from cadmium, which means that we now have high density pigments like the ones that Reaper started using a while ago for HD and bones, but those aren't as solid coverage as cadmium. Like they're just not as good that way, and it just won't be probably. They just aren't, because you're not making them the same way. Oh, you're not sure it did degrade. Interesting, Hyper Bunny. Yeah. If you find that out, that's an interesting thought. No, Trash. No, you don't. Or at least I don't. You have to look at your old paint jobs so that you can see that you've gotten better. I say it. You must look at them. I still have a dry brushed Chaos Hound. Darn it. You can suck it up. You know what? If extraterrestrials come across our world without us on it, first of all, I'll be sad because it means we failed to prevent a huge apocalypse. And second of all, like, they're going to make mistakes about our culture right and left just because they aren't us. And I'm sure there are other things that they're going to be like, what the heck about? Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly, Scrying Eye. It's like, okay, when you get a bottle, think about the purpose, right? We're back to purpose. When you get a bottle of water or of soda, you want it to essentially be perfectly recyclable or biodegradable, so that it can go away entirely after you use it. Like, it is a product that you use for a very short period of time, and then you really want it to disappear. But paint on a miniature is not like that. And a miniature is not like that, right? So that's why I say you always have to look at what is the purpose and work toward, if you're gonna develop biodegradable X or Y, like the Coke bottles, then do it for things that we use a crap ton of all over the world that we want to go away, right? Then, eventually maybe that tech will filter down in some sort of useful way to the surfaces industry, which is, paint and such. But yeah, it's hard to. Hey there, Night SOS. No, not russet brown. Too dark. Rich leather, lemon yellow, pure white. Inara. I just pretty much wanted to mix a tan. And actually, I started with the wrong color. I started with rich leathers. Now I have realized that you guys distracted me and got me all hyped up and totally put the wrong color on the Sphinx. So I'm just gonna wet blend it. Ta-da! Wet blending. That's what happens when you get Anne on her paint chemistry soapbox, and also on my environmental soapbox, because the environment is something I care very deeply about, and it is actually one of my points that I vote on typically, is the attitude toward the environment, and in various elections, and so. But I want some thoughtfulness put into, like, what we are building to be destroyable, right? Paint is the least of our worries. Let's deal with plastic bottles first and containers. All right, there we go. Yeah. Personally, I hope that the aliens won't ever question, because that we'll still be around out there talking with them. We may not be on Earth much anymore, but we'll be somewhere. That's what I want. I want interstellar travel, darn it. Or at least I want us to colonize the solar system, like in, what's it? I can't remember the book series. Help me, Abaddon's Gate. That book series by James S.A. Corey. The Expanse, that's it. That's a lot more reachable, but I want us to get off the Earth and start colonizing other stuff. Now that we're getting a bit more conscious about ecosystems and all that. Well, now that I wet blended that part of the Sphinx, I kind of have to wet blend everything else. So I'm just going to get her a little paws. I'm going to make them a little lighter, I think, because they're going to probably go up to a cream color. Hi, Jelly. How's it going? Yes. I wish I would have been in that discussion on Zambi's thing about biodegradable paint, but I probably would have, like, ended up, like, madly typing a lot of stuff that most people ignored, so it's probably just as well I wasn't. But yeah, in general, I'd much rather... Let's work on the water bottles and plastic soda bottles and all those first. Let's get all that under control, shall we? Like, I pretty much stopped using any plastic bottles at this point. I just use a reusable and I refill it from my Brita. Up, little bit. Didn't get as much soapy in there. The soap must not have gotten that area as much because my thin paint is not wanting to adhere there. So what I have to do is mix up a little bit thicker paint. Yeah, pretty much Sore Black. That's what I'm saying. We're getting there. Our mindset is shifting. But eventually, I want us, now that we're moving the right direction, more or less, we're getting there. Like, at least people are starting to really focus on these questions. So I have faith that we'll get there. But then, I want to see us, like, you know, free up the Earth a little bit here and make some real efforts to spread out and not overpopulate and let the planet breathe a little. I really don't want us to move off Earth because we've killed it. How about that? I think about these things a lot. Probably more than a lot of people, but... Alright, so I mixed up a thicker tan to see if I could cover over this area that the paint was resisting sticking to. So I'm just going to put it on really thick with a soft brush. You don't want to put it on with a hard brush because it, as I mentioned, hard brushes yesterday, it will tend to pull it off and scrape paint across the surface. So I use my soft sable brushes in this case. Yes, I will stream this afternoon, Twisted Oma. We're going to figure out some stuff about the city today. We're going to figure out what the main buildings are and what the gates name, like name some of the gates. And I wanted to talk a bit about the gods also. So yes, today at 4:30 p.m. on my stream, twitch.tv/paintingbig, we will be doing our D&D world creation cool stuff. All right. Yeah, see, it's just not wanting... The paint, for some reason, even though I did wash the Sphinx, just does not want to stick as well here on the belly. Now, if all my paint was dry, honestly, I could go and spot clean this area pretty easily. Just get a bit of soapy water and... What's up, Kiri? You wandering around. David's not at his chair. Sorry, got distracted by the dog. Oh, are you city building today? Good. Yeah. You gonna settle down, little girl? I know, David's not in here. You wish he was. Sorry, get distracted. Kiri is unsettled. There is a small chance of Kiri emergency today. I would say 30%. So what we can do is we can let that layer dry, and then we can put a thinner layer of a different color over the top if we want to change the color. Yes. See you later, Twisted. Right, it is, Saltor, right? That's exactly the point. You're used to something, but that doesn't mean that you have to be used to it forever. So you can change your lifestyle and your habits on that. And it takes a little effort, but it's not, like, undoable. And then after it's second nature, you just don't even miss it. I used to use water bottles at Reaper because Reaper gave us water bottles. And I got in this habit of, because I have to make sure I drink enough water throughout the day because of my medical stuff. So I was using those bottles because they're such a handy measuring device. But eventually I realized I could just use my Yeti, which was also 24 ounces, and just do it that way. So it was just an adjustment. And now I just don't I don't like to reach for a plastic bottle. I take my Yeti or I have a water, what do you call it? Thermos. I'll take that with me instead. All right, so that is sticking for the most part. Yeah, it is. So yeah, if you come across paint that doesn't want to stick, load it up thick. Make sure you don't thin it. And then apply. She actually has a jewelry thing down here. I'm going to have to line that so that I remember it. And use a soft brush, because if you use a harder brush, like a Taklon, Taklon kind of will scrape the paint over the surface, and if it can show brush marks, it will. So remember that. Whereas a softer brush is less inclined to really scrape the paint over the surface, and so it's going to allow the paint to self-level a lot better. Yes, Kiri dog heads, I know. So now we can see where I got too dark up here, and I went light there, and now I need to do a wet blend to blend this area in. But I mean, this paint that I'm using over the back of the model here is very thin. Probably just a 3:1, my standard. A little bit of wet blending to bring that fur color in. If I want to, I could blend around the muscles. Ah, there we go. I'm gonna go light down here. I have my window open in this room, so if we get some heavy noise from outside, I'll have to stop and close it, but it makes it nice and cool. So this, with all the computer equipment in here, and the lights, this room can get a little warm. All right, just checking to make sure you guys aren't asking questions. All right, so I do want this color, the lion parts, to be a different color from the skin, although it can be close to this color with, obviously the paws are going out to a lion color. So I think I'm going to make her haunches and her back a little darker and then blend it up, which is just, since I kind of screwed that up in the first place, it's just the way I'm going to get around it. I think I'm going to let that side dry, and I'm going to just kind of work maybe on this side. So what I'm doing, guys, here is I'm starting with a darker color because I know I want to highlight it up to a lighter buff color like this. So starting with this darker tan is a pretty good way to do it. If you want to remind yourself which parts are lighter and darker, like if I want this longer fur to all be lighter, then I'll base coat it slightly lighter to remind myself. And I'll probably be using this same color to highlight the haunch, so it works. For those of you who are on my Patreon, you saw my $2 video on painting were creatures and doing fur texture. We're probably going to do a little fur texture on Sphinxy here. There is usually a fade on animals where you've got a darker color on the inner part of the, a darker color on the outer part of the leg and a lighter color on the inner part of the legs. That's what we're doing. It's all happy accidents. Bob Rossett. And then I'll just get the tail since I have. Now the tip of the tail I'm probably going to do black because it calls back to the top of her, to her hair. Remember, that's all in kind of like repeating colors. We're also probably going to use this black and blue on her wings a bit. You always want to repeat colors on the model, especially if you're using a strong color like I did with the blue to highlight that hair. because you want the eye of the viewer to be encouraged to move around the various aspects of the various parts of the model. And if you repeat a bright color across the surface of the model, that's one way to do that. And when you use a bright color like this blue and you don't repeat it, it looks wrong. It looks like the model's out of balance. Or the rest of the model looks really drab. All right, and I need a little bit of dark color on the back of that. And I'm just wet blending while it's wet, because it's easy, especially if you're going to put any fur texture. And if I do fur texture on the tail, it's probably just going to be a little bit like on the top, just to suggest fur, but the tail is such short fur that I may not do as much there. Yeah, plastic utensils are bad, and if you doubt it, go to the Monterey Bay Aquarium if you're ever in the Northern California Bay Area, just south of it. They have sculptures that people made out of finding plastic trash on the beaches. Just forks and knives and just so many plastic utensils. And there's really no excuse for using plastic nowadays because there are biodegradable, like compostable utensils that you can use. I have a bunch of compostable spoons that I bring on road trips for Kiri's food and for my stuff. Yeah, plastic utensils are just a bane. Yeah, it's just being mindful. It's just learning. Just thinking about all the little ways you can adjust your life if you want to be a little bit more environmentally friendly. I'm going to lighten up this fur on this side also because I want this to be lighter in general. And then I need to get this last paw. It's a 2 plus white, Tashi. It's my usual rule is only mix 2 colors together, and if you add a third one, it has to be white or black. That way you can control. White is the easiest, obviously, because white is only ever going to lighten the color, so you can still you're not getting into pigment trouble. The reason I say don't mix more than 3 colors if one of them isn't black or white. Is that then what you start getting into is pigment interactions, because you don't know what pigment, you guys don't really know what pigment was used in here or pigments were used in here. So it's very easy for you to get into trouble. So usually I say use 2 colors, and then if you must use a third color, just using white to lighten it or black to darken it. And honestly, most of the time I don't even follow the black thing. I just only use white as a third color. Hello, Calisandra. How's it going? Haven't seen you for a while. I am doing spot mixing between these 3 colors. This is my thicker color that I mixed up when this wouldn't cover, which is kind of close to this, maybe just a touch darker because I didn't add the extra drop of white. This is my thinner light color. This is my base rich leather. So this is actually only 1 color right here. And then these are mixes of that color with this and white. So then I'm just doing some wet blending to give kind of shadows and highlights and to block in areas that I want to be lighter, like this, the long fur here on her haunch. So that's what I'm doing, Tashi. Yeah, I do a lot of spot mixing and spot wet blending. Like up here. I probably want some lighter color too. On the back of her back. So I can block it in, then I can blend it in if I want to. But essentially I want the lion parts to be, to blend with each other. Look like they belong together. Even if they're a little bit darker up top and a little bit lighter down below. But yeah, I do a lot wet blending, especially on the stream because I'm trying to work a little faster usually on stream. I'm trying to finish things. I'm not going as pokey as I often do in real life. I'm a fairly slow painter when it comes down to it. So slow painters do not despair. But wet blending is my way to speed up the process. Okay, so that's better. Oh, okay. You have today off. That's awesome, Calisandra. I wish I had a day off. Yeah, lemon yellow is a good color. It's a pure. It's got only one yellow pigment in it. It's the greener yellow, so it's really good to highlight greens with. Greens and skin tones, I like to use it. The orangier yellow is stronger, but it just tends to overwhelm colors sometimes if you're mixing with it. So I do like lemon. There's a reason I've been using a lot of it lately. All right. So now, if we want to get into highlighting, let's say I want a little more golden color. I'm going to add one more drop of lemon yellow to this. Cider, tea, or cocoa on your snowy day? Oh, cocoa. I love cocoa. I ran across a new drinking chocolate in the store the other day, and I almost bought it, but it wasn't quite cold enough here yet. Mocha is even better. But if you can't have coffee, then cocoa. I like my cocoa made with coconut milk. But I'm not a big cider fan. They're too sweet for me these days. And the alcoholic ciders just put me to sleep. For some reason, they've always done that. Like, there are other alcohols that make me really bright and hyper, but not cider. Hard ciders, just like Anne is just out like a light. Oh, nice. Yum, yum. Yeah, there was shaving your own drinking chocolate. That's decadent is what that is. There shouldn't have even been a question, Soltor. If you have that in the house, why would you even think about something else? Unless you needed the caffeine. In which case, be aware that chocolate and pu'er tea, if you like pu'er, it's a double fermented black tea. One of my favorites. It's slightly higher caffeine than other black teas. But that pu'er works really well with chocolate. I forget. I think it's Numi. Numi makes a chocolate pu'er. It's my mocha equivalent for tea. I get it in the winter. No, I haven't. Oats are kind of one of the things I'm kind of avoiding. So I mostly go with coconut milk. For all my, if I do coffee, which is very rare because my guts tend to not like it, but sometimes I can get away with it. I got away with it the other day. I had a pumpkin spice latte, which I then proceeded to drink over the course of like 3 hours and totally like meant that I could not get to sleep. Oh dear. For my power nap, I mean. I usually do a power nap because it helps. I ruined my power nap with my Starbucks latte. Yeah, I have coconut creamer every morning in Ara. That's what I do. I've restricted my dairy a lot. I don't, I do certain cheeses, but mostly I do feta cheese or manchego or, goat or sheep's milk cheese instead of dairy, straight up dairy. Because I realized there came a point when I realized that if I had a lot of dairy, I couldn't go to Dairy Queen anymore because an entire, even a small size, shake or blizzard would upset my gut. So that was when I realized I had a little bit of lactose intolerance going on, and goat and sheep's milk tends not to trigger that. It's a protein in the milk, I think, that cows make versus certain species of cows make, or certain species, or certain genuses. Certain breeds of cows produce a different protein in their milk, and that can be more problematic or less depending on the protein. So yeah, I still do a bit of butter, and I still do I think a butter actually is it. I almost never, I sometimes Parmesan because Parm tends not to, it's such a hard cheese in the aging process and everything seems to mitigate its effects. So I can do a good Parm. But otherwise I do Pecorino Romano, Manchego. So we're shading a little bit here to make the thigh come out a little bit more. Yeah, exactly. I thought they'd identified Night SOS that there was a genetic component to that. Not all evolved through environment. Science on the food is always so, like, who do you believe? Studies paid for by the Dairy Institute, studies paid for by, the Coconut Institute, it's like, who do you believe in food science these days? It's like, you have to look at every study and see who like sponsored it, because you know that they've twisted it to serve themselves. It's so silly. It's like, you're supposed to be able to trust science, but you can't even trust science because it depends on who paid for the science to be done. I'm going to get some walnut brown, guys. I want to line this, her thigh comes up here. Her lower thigh, lower leg. And I want to make sure I line that. Yeah, Saltar, I mean, we weren't made to drink dairy all through our lives, that's for sure. I don't know about the processed dairy because, like I said, I have had reactions, unexpected reactions to large amounts of processed dairy. So I would tend to say, and I didn't like milk as a child either. And my dad later told me, like way later, when I mentioned to him that I'd gone, like, more or less dairy-free. He's like, oh yeah, you had a milk allergy as a kid. And then you grew out of it. And it's like, no, I don't think I did, Dad. I just remember, like, always dreading having milk with dinner when I was growing up, when I was a kid. Which is so funny. It's like, sometimes you know better than you know. Treasure Rocky NMM question. Yeah, go ahead, Calisandra. Yeah. And what part of the Rocky do you have the question on? I think I shelved him. I wasn't happy with, we did a lot of different techniques all over him, and so he wasn't really a model that I felt like could finish anymore, Treasure Rocky. Because we had done so many different things to him, and there comes a point when you do a lot of different techniques. Sorry, a little bit of gritty paint there that I just took off. Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of babies have, like, little allergy things pop up, it seems. Makes sense sometimes, like, it can be because your immune system is so immature at that point, but considering I still have problems, I don't know. Everybody's such an individual too, right? Everybody reacts differently to things. Medications, foods. But yeah, shoot, Calisandra. Ask. I assume you're typing. There we go. Gold NMM on the chest, but I like more bronze look you did. I have the gold shadow on it now. Is there a way to use that and still get a bronze look? Yeah, just don't go up with bright ochre yellows. I think I was using... Honestly, I would probably switch maybe to a very intense one, like rich leather. And maybe like just a little bit of yellow at the end. Bronze still has a yellow component to it. I can't remember if I used rich or polished, though. Polished is much more orange. I think I just used rich, and I went up toward a much more like gold NMM highlight with it. And this is close to gold NMM shadow. So actually, if you started it, you could go with this. Yeah, on the fly. That's pretty much what I do. Rich leather and polished leather are my go-to NMM colors these days because they make everything a little bit easier, it feels like. So I would go up with NMM Gold Highlight still, which is a nice buttery yellow and warmer because you want that warm. But I would try mixes of these guys, and I would mostly stay strong on the brown. Tarnished bronze is quite brown. And maybe put even some dark green in the shadows. I don't remember exactly what I did on him, Calisandra, because it's like when I look at a color, I'm just looking at it and going, oh, okay, how do I remix that if I want to remix it, right? What did I probably use? But it's most likely I use these guys. You know, it kind of is, Saltor, once you understand the pigments, I can get to a color many different ways. Like, looking at it, because you have 3 yellow pigments, you have 2 or 3 red pigments, you have 2 blue pigments, you have a green, you've got 3 browns, all different, that react differently when you add black to them, and then you've got black and white. Now, because I have 3 different yellows and 3 different browns, I could mix the yellow brown from almost any of those, and the yellow browns would end up very close to each other. However, what they wouldn't be a match in is things like coverage. That's where you sacrifice. So sometimes you can mix a color using different paints, but you will find that one of them will have better coverage. One of them will have more transparency. Maybe one of them is just a little bit more saturated and one is a little desaturated. So there are many ways to get to where you're going in, relatively. But, in the end, there will be differences that may have nothing to do with color. So we're shading that thigh. It's coming along. No, Ruddy Leather is not even close. Then the NMM Gold Shadow is as close as you're going to get, Cassandra. If you've got that, just stick with it. Try mixing it with just the highlight. Don't even go to the midtone. And what I would recommend you do, because this is usually what I do, is to your base coat, add 1 drop of Lantern Yellow. And then when you mix your NMM Gold Highlight with your NMM Gold Shadow, add 1 drop of this also. So like 4 drops of each. 4 drops or 3 drops of shadow, 3 drops of highlight, and then a drop of lemon yellow. And then when you go up to this, also add a drop of, sorry, not lemon yellow, lantern yellow. And if you don't have lantern, you can use marigold, but it's not as good. You could also use candlelight. And again, not quite as good, but it'll work probably in a pinch. Saturated. Vibanaqua, are you on my Patreon? I did a PDF for the $5 tier on what is saturation and how to use it. But saturation, essentially, saturated color is a bright color. So like the clear brights are the most saturated colors we make. A desaturated color is anything else, and it varies on a scale. So a muted color is usually very grayed or browned out. Doesn't have a lot of vibrancy to it. Doesn't have a lot of brightness. It's not a bright color at all. Like a gray blue would be a desaturated color. You have marigold? All right. So, like, this Sphinx is actually desaturated, but the blue I used in her hair is saturated. But the browns, otherwise, are very muted colors. Her eyes, likewise, are a very saturated color. That's partially so that the color shows up on camera. The Succubus Kiss that I used for her lips is also a pretty saturated color, although I've desaturated by keeping it dark. So essentially, a color can be saturated or desaturated, but then when you use it, you can further saturate it or further desaturate it. Unless you're working with the clear brights, then they're pretty much like are as bright as you're going to get them. No problem, Cassandra. It should get you close at least. I want a more yellow highlight for this fur, although that is coming up very lion-y. Yeah, Betty Edwards' Color is the best book for me, for my money. I always recommend it. James Gurney, Color and Light is a follow-up. I wouldn't start with James Gurney's Color and Light. I think I would start with Betty. She goes at it from a more basic perspective sometimes. But those are my 2 go-tos. And then James Gurney also has a blog that he often puts very useful information on. So I want yellow, and I need to think about how the fur is going to be growing down the back. Whenever you're painting a furry beast, as I said on my video just the other day, make sure you keep your brush strokes in line with the direction the fur would be growing. Even if you're not leaving much texture, if you leave any brush strokes at all, at least they will be going in the proper direction for how the fur is growing. Yeah, that's brought that yellow into there. That's what I wanted. Need this to be a golden lion color, so we're dealing with that. Yes, drawing on the right side of the brain. Yep. Yeah, Betty Edwards rocks. Cool, Vimanakwa, yeah. Yeah, saturation is a very useful thing to know about. This is why I did a whole PDF on it. It's just, it helps you so much to control, like an understanding of it is really the difference between making a good color scheme and a clashing color scheme at times. With saturation and with contrast, you can paint a beautiful model every time. So learning how to utilize it is probably some of the most valuable time that you could put in would be in learning to utilize saturation. So I'm doing all these and I'm highlighting again. I'm using a brush stroke that would be in the direction the fur is growing. And if you wonder what direction fur is growing, you just have to look at your dog or your cat or a picture of an animal that is suitably close enough to what you're painting online. And note the fur direction. Sometimes it helps to look at a longer furred animal to see the direction the fur is growing. I totally forgot to paint this foot, so I'm going to do that now. Must paint foot. Sadly, I've thinned my paint down again and now it doesn't want to stick to said foot, which means I'm remixing a color again. Actually, I'm just going to add a couple of drops to my over-thinned paint. I'm going to wick this paint off right now, though. Hey there, Bob and Julie. How's it going? I'm working on lion parts today, except I forgot to paint this foot, and now the paint doesn't want to stick, so I have to mix up a new base color. But you can see the lion color that I am putting on, and I just base coated the rest of her. We're working on it. This is going to make her look a lot closer to painted as we get on there. But I want the color to end up close to like her paw color, so this is very orangey right now, but it'll go down. But right now I need to fix this side because we definitely have too thin of paint. So I'm going to remix this color. Or at least I'm going to remix something close to it. Yeah, we've talked about a lot of stuff today. Don't do what I do, though, folks. Don't forget to paint a paw. Always paint your paws. There, now I've got a nice thick color. It's the same as my original golden color over here. You can see that it's really close. It doesn't have to be perfect, guys. News. You don't have to match your color perfectly if you forget to paint a section. You just need to get close enough. When it comes down to it, your original section that was painted this color is nowhere near this paw. I mean, maybe the shadows are close to it, but it's close enough to look just fine. And if I shade it with the same color and I highlight it with the same color, it's going to look exactly the same. So don't overthink this whole, you know, oh, I missed this part. How am I ever going to match that color that I mixed? No, just get close enough. Don't stress about it. All right, and make sure that I get all of these areas now that I missed, like little toes. Part of these toes are claws, but we'll deal with it. Yeah. Alrighty. Get under the tail because I missed some fur down there. I think I've gotten everything else. This is where, since I've just remixed this color, I may as well double check and make sure that I do have a base coat on all of the other lion-y parts that I wanted. And I think I do. Oh, actually, almost forgot. Got to get the inside for her little ears. She's got lighter fur there. Because I want those ears to stand out too, and this will help those ears stand out. So very carefully paint the inside of the ears. And that also helps this down here relate to what's up here. And put on a second coat if you feel like it. once the first coat has dried, which should be pretty much instantaneous if you're using thinner paint. Checking up on chat. Yeah, Winged Horizon, this is actually the sculptors are in chat with us today. Green users is Julie Guthrie and Bob Rodolphi, and Julie sculpted this Sphinx. She's got wings too. I just am not working on them yet. She's a lovely, lovely model with a really cool base too. I don't have her currently glued down. She's just pegged in, so she is on something for me to paint her. Yeah, thanks. It's we went very blue-black with it. I'm going to tone that down just a little bit, like I did kind of on this side, to make it more like kind of raven-haired. I want it to definitely be black and not blue, so I'll be toning that down a little bit over time. But I did want to go pretty saturated with it because her jewelry, of course, is going to have that blue in it. So it's nice to repeat colors over the course of the models. Should you pause when painting? Pause. Well, you're already pausing if you're pausing. So I think that's a redundant question. I'm going to take more of my rich leather and bring it in to all these shadow areas, kind of defining all of these muscle groups, because Julie knows her biz, and she's given us lots of beautiful Catley muscles here. So we want to emphasize the structure of the leg. And then I do want to bring this up really high. So what I'm going to do here is take a little bit of this tan that I just mixed up and mix an off-white with it. Remember, I talk about this a lot, but one way to make all your colors work together is to mix a little bit of the previous one into the new one. So if I want to make an off-white that looks like it belongs with this tan on the fur, I can just mix it by using 4 drops of white and a dab of my previous color. Mix that up. And then I get kind of a beigey off-white. And if I want more yellow in it or more golden color in it, I can put just a little dab. Sorry, that was a bubble. A little dab of lemon yellow in it. Mix that in, since that's the color I'm using these days for this. And then we get a nice golden off-white. You could also just use creamy ivory, but it's not quite the same because it doesn't have exactly the same pigments as your previous tan. Whereas if you mix your own off-white, it does have exactly the same pigments. So it can look a little bit more like it belongs there. Like it's a natural lightening of the base color. Is it Dr. Seuss Day already? Yeah, Winged Horizon, I like it a lot too. That's why I picked it. I've been waiting on it. We've been painting a lot of player characters recently, which I like, but every once in a while it's good to switch it up. So I decided to Sphinx out. Sphinx out for a bit. We Sphinxed out a lot last week and got a lot of this done, and then today is the first day this week that I'm working on it. Remember, tomorrow, guys, is the AMA. Let's hope my internet actually works. I had a power outage last week, so we couldn't AMA. Ask Ann anything, or that's AAA, I guess. Ask me anything is what it really should be. But yeah, and we're going to give away a big mini, 3 big minis actually, during the course of the AMA. And we have a lot of questions to cover in the Reaper Discord under Ann AMA, so I hope you all have your learning hats on. I'm certain we will have some interesting stuff to talk about, as always. Now I'm just kind of going over with this light color to outline all these little fur dabs that Julie has sculpted so nicely. Any Kolinsky sable should do this. Winged Horizon, it says Kolinsky on the barrel. There are various brands. This one is a Raphael. I like it a lot because it's got a nice big wide body, but it has a razor tip. Any high grade sable, Kolinsky sable is essentially red sable, only it's the 2 highest grades of it. And so it keeps that perfect point. It has a nice snap, it has a good body. It keeps its shape really well. That's what snap is called. Snap means that you can kind of distend, you can paint with the brush and it curves, but then when you lift it, it comes back to a straight brush. That's what snap is. When you use a cheap red sable, what you'll notice is when you brush with it, maybe it stays a little bit curved after your brush stroke and it doesn't spring back to form right away. So that's brushes 101 really quick. But yeah, I only use Kolinsky sables for painting unless I'm base coating something big, and then I use a Taklon, which is a synthetic brush. Synthetic brushes, which are not natural hair, are made of plastic, so they will not keep that point. They will naturally be worn down, and the plastic will start fuzzing at the tips. So like this, you can kind of see how fuzzy it is at the tip. That's what happens to plastic. It's just a natural abrasion as you rub it repeatedly on a surface. So that's why if you're using a plastic or Taklon bristle, it won't ever, I mean, they're cheaper brushes for a reason, but it won't ever keep this razor point. This brush, I've been painting with for about a year now. It still keeps a perfect point. It will continue to keep a perfect point probably for the coming several years, as long as I don't leave it nose down in the paint water. So yeah, that's how you get that. And they're more expensive, but like not hugely so. Like a Taklon brush can run you between like $2 and $5, I suppose. $2 and $6 maybe these days. And these Kolinskys can run you $10 to $15, $20 if you try to buy it in an art store. You should never buy it locally. If you can, you'll pay much more for it buying it locally. So I order mine online. But the cost of that extra $10 or whatever, or the benefit of it is that you have a brush that stays good for years, literally years, depending on how hard you are on your brushes. So if you're good and you don't leave your brushes sitting in your paint water, which is a habit that's the first bad habit you should ever break yourself of as a miniature painter or any kind of painter. It just ruins your brush just super fast. Morbertoth. Thanks, Morbert. Yeah, she's coming along. We'll do a lot of fur probably in the coming, this coming week, I think. Yeah, exactly, Winged Horizon. Yeah, if you've gotten in the habit of taking decent care of your brushes, you probably could invest in a Kolinsky, and then just like get one that's maybe a little smaller than mine here, and just try using it for fine details and eyes and things like that. But I mean, I use various sizes. I use everything from my 3 main sizes of brush. Here, let me get them all like nice and pointy. There you go. So these are my BBs. This is a size 1 Raphael, 8408. 8408 is called what the series is called. And the series tells you what the shape of the brush is. So like for my Da Vinci's, I love Da Vinci Maestro. That's my other favorite brand. These guys are series 10, and what that means is that it's a normal round shape. And I've got a 000 and a 1. And those are what those are. The 000 is the smallest I would ever use for painting. Yeah, I don't know what Army Painter tends to be a kind of a discount brand, so I would be surprised if they had a really good quality sable. Yeah, leaving point down in your paint water is going to ruin your brushes. Also, painting too long with them without rinsing. If you guys pay attention, you'll notice I rinse my brushes a lot, and that helps to keep them in good condition. So let's go back to this. There we go. But yeah, we don't mind recovering stuff here, David K. Because, you may be new or you may have missed something, but somebody else also is probably new and missed something. So it's never a bad thing to recover stuff that's really important, like brush maintenance or brush sizes or brush brands. It's never a waste of time. It's one of the key things. I mean, getting a good brush, getting a Kolinsky sable will level you up instantly. Because for the first time, you're going to be able to put the paint exactly where you want it to go without fighting your brush. And I'm all about reducing frustration with this hobby. So if you take good care of your brushes, then I would say try a Kolinsky. Do remember that, and you see how much water I've added. I've added water to each of these paints. With a sharp, thin brush like this, you must add water for it to come off if you want to do really super little tiny dots or super fine lines. You want to essentially have a bit of water in your paint to do that. So do remember to thin your paint. And then you will get a lot of mileage from these brushes. I'm actually going to put some walnut a walnut shadow here, blocking in some shadows. And I may grab my thick paint to help if I sense that it's not going down really well. I don't really care what color my stone is going to be at this point. I just am going to use my walnut brown to kind of block in a shadow under the Sphinx so that she's set off from her base a bit. That helps me just kind of visualize where I'm going. It helps me see the limits of the fur. It does help to put a shadow under the model because she would cast a shadow. So when you paint your stone color over the top of this, it will be slightly darker, or it'll remind you to put a stronger shadow there, both of which are good. I think I'm seeing a recurring theme here where this part didn't want to take the paint unless I thickened it up. Same with this whole area. So maybe this area just didn't get hit enough with soapy water when I was washing my mini. So there. Then we're going to shade, shade, shade. I just want a boundary kind of. Val, I'm betting that you are not thinning your paint enough. I would bet you money looking at your painting. And if you thin your paint enough, then I'm betting you're not unloading your brush enough. But I would have to see you paint, like see what you were doing and look at your paint consistency. We can do this with coaching. We can deconstruct what you're doing. Because you're never going to get really fine detail out of those Taklons. Maybe out of a fresh Taklon, you could do something moderately good. Jennifer used to say, Jennifer Haley, famous mini painter of the world. Jennifer used to say that she could layer with Taklons, but Kolinsky's made it so much easier to blend. But she was able to use a Taklon for it, so you can start with a Taklon. Yeah, 3/0, same as the 333. Different brands will have different sizes, though, guys. So, I mean, it varies. My 000 in the Da Vinci is the same as a 10/0 in the Reaper Kolinsky's, for example. And it's the same as a... no, don't ever use paper for unloading the brush, Tashi. Use something that is non-permeable. If you unload your brush on a absorbent surface, you're going to wick more water than paint out of your brush. It's going to change the consistency of the paint. And if you've mixed up your paint to be a certain consistency, and then you tap it off on a paper towel, you're instantly losing that consistency. And you're going to find out suddenly your paint seems stronger than you thought it was, and maybe you're leaving brush strokes. So, what did you change to get used to the sable, Inara? Like, do you remember, like, was there a thing that you changed about your painting that helped you get used to the Kolinsky? Just gonna get this pause. But yeah, I unload on the side of my palette. Like, you guys can see me do it. If I dip, if I'm, like, using... Especially if you use thin paint. Actually, okay, for those of you on my Patreon, next month, I've already shot the video because I'm trying to get ahead, but next month's $2 video is all about unloading your brush. And I actually do an experiment where I thin paints a little bit more each time, and I show how much you have to unload the brush to get good results. It has to do with shape and yeah. But we're not going around measuring fair rules, sadly, so... So it's still confusing to people. Right, Valentar? Oh, watch me paint. That's what changed up your style. Oh, no. I mean, to each their own. But I've used both. And from time to time, I go back and I test Taklon brushes, like newer Taklon brushes where they're trying to make it emulate and be like a natural hair. Like they're actually making shaped bristles now that more mimic the shape of a natural hair. Correct. Hey there, Shaner. How's it going? it looked, Val, this isn't the place for it. We should work on this in the coaching. I haven't looked at your new stuff yet, but I will. But the first one that you did looked like the paint was thick to me. That's why I asked if you wanted to do coaching on that succubus instead of the wolf. But I've already got your wolf entry all written, and I'm doing pictures today, so we will stick with the wolf for one more. But yeah, I don't want to do too much personal coaching. This is the Reaper stream, so. But yeah, essentially what I find is that the biggest issue with learning to paint with these brushes is that you've got to thin your paint. Unless you're using a really big one. Really big Kolinsky, a big fat one without this fine tip. And a lot of people are really timid about thinning their paint when they first come to the hobby, because when you thin your paint, it goes everywhere. So that's where unloading your brush becomes key. So like I said, be ready for next month, you patrons out there. For $2, you can get my video where I demonstrate exactly how much I unload my brush for all the paint consistencies. And I show you how I do it. We are just like getting... But I challenge you to get like really fine detail with a Taklon. Like maybe with a very fresh Taklon, you'll be able to do, you know, a decent job with really fine detail. But I will stand by that. Like even other Kolinskis aren't equal. Like the things I can do with this brush are indecent. Like it's insane what micro tiny little details I can hit, like those little tiny highlights in her eyes. You know, trying to do that with a Taklon, I don't think it would even work. I don't think I could find a Taklon that would do that. So the Raphael does have a razor tip, and partially what you're seeing there at Chibi is just that the Da Vinci Zero is going to be a thinner brush overall. So if you tend to press a little harder, if you don't have as delicate a touch, you're going to notice that it just doesn't. And also remember, it's going to vary from brush to brush. But in general, when you've got a brush here, you know, all these hairs are angled, but this is a longer brush. So it's a little bit more, I guess, more fragile, it might say. That said, the tip on these is very comparable. So it'll depend on the brush. If you think you've got a bad brush or one that doesn't keep a good tip, you can replace it. You can return it always. Usually Dick Blick will... they probably have if you've had it for months, maybe not, but... Alright, let's see here. We got our little fur there, we got our fur there, we got our shadow all around the Sphinx. Makes her look like she's actually sitting on something. She's not levitating anymore. I think I want to do a little bit higher highlights up here. And I think I need to make this hair just a bit lighter. Hey, Achilles. You always say that when you pop into chat. I should be saying, hey, Achilles is back. You can talk, Val, just I can't talk to you about your personal project on stream as much. Feel free to ask general questions, though. Or questions about Sphinxy. So I'm going to thin down my really pale paint that I've been using to get all these little hairs, because I decided I want it to look like it's more separate. Even though I started with a lighter color, I think I want it lighter. So I'm going to glaze over this area with that light color, which is just painting a really thin filter of lighter paint over it. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to kind of blend in this area and wick off any excess fluid. I don't want it to dry with a lot of pooling, because then it'll break. It's just too thin. I want it to dry just in an even filter over this area. And so wherever I see it pooling, I'm going to try to wick it off with the tip of my brush. And I'm going to try to do it mostly from the edges here now, because it's starting to dry on the main area. So when I wick any fluid off, I'll try to hit the outside edge. That way I'm going to avoid stripping up paint. So see what that's done? That's lightened this whole entire area and pulled that fur together a little bit more. I have Sphinxy SKU. Hold on, Cassandra. Sphinxy SKU 77576. Alright, I'm going to line the toes and darken the claws in on this foot also. And the claws are all pretty much here, 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 and here. And the liner might look harsh for the toe lining for now. I can certainly blend it in with some glazing though, so I'm not too worried about it. Kind of like I'm doing with this line here. It's very dark, but I can essentially soften that down now that I've got it by painting, say, my shadow color over it here. I've got a little thickened there. Got to add some more. Add some more water to that color. Rich leather. Might need something a little bit lighter if I really want to take the line down. Then I paint like that over it. So I painted tan color over the top of that dark line. Lets me keep this dark line, but blend it in a little bit more. So it's not as stark. So if you do lining and you're like, oh, I've got to bring out that that's actually, you know, there's going to be a shadow there. I need it to be dark. And you think that it got too dark or too cartoony, you can glaze over it and bring it back a little bit. And then I can bring in some shadows that are maybe a little bit darker to make that look more natural. So this is my walnut, just mixed a tiny bit of walnut with my rich leather to make a shadow for that. And bringing in that shadow more dramatically here with that darker color can help to make her look more sunlit. The darker the shadow, the more bright the light is going to look. So if you bring up a dark shadow underneath a light edge like this, look at how much it more now it looks like it's maybe in the sunlight, and you've got this really dark shadow under here. And this is a good place to put it because it's kind of tilted away from the light, so a dark shadow should be there. Should be down here too. So every time you put that dark shadow in, suddenly everything looks like it's more sunlit. So this is where how dark your shadows go should not just be, it shouldn't just automatically be going really dark with your shadows. You should be thinking about your lighting. I mean, going dark with your shadows over the whole model will give you a specific appearance, right? And not going as dark with the shadows will also give you a specific appearance. But if you want to understand the why of it, the darker the shadow, the more dramatic the light source looks, just like that leg. So now look how flat this leg looks. It looks like there's nothing going on. So we haven't added any of that. You add that shadow, suddenly it looks really dramatic. And now, along with that, I have a responsibility to figure out how this fringe of light fur is really gonna be shaded and highlighted. Hey, Motor City Ray, how's it going? Thanks for the resub, 13 months. No, it's cats today, Xanacles. It's cats today, says the Sphinx. Not dogs, cats. So since I did that, now I need to look down at here and say, oh, well, there would be a shadow here probably. Like I just highlighted this whole area, but really that's not realistic. This area should be getting a little more light. Maybe this area. Maybe a little bit of bounce light here where it comes out and hits, the light kind of passes by and the fur comes out a little bit here. But I can definitely shade a little bit. And if I want to, I can mix up this shadow color. I can actually go grab some rich leather, plop it over there, quite a bit of it, and then just add a tiny touch of walnut. And that gives me a dark brown. And then I've got that color. So again, I'm adding like And notice I'm, again, only working with 2 colors here. Like, I didn't take one of these colors and add walnut to it to make a shadow. I took just my pure rich leather, and then I added walnut to it to make a shadow. So again, you only want to use usually 2 colors for your mixes. If you have a third color, it should probably be white. I'm going to add a little water to that to get it transparent. Oh, is it Make a Dog's Day? Well, then I need to give Kiri one of her greenies. She likes greenies. She already has like 2 balls on her blanket, so she has a plethora of squeaky balls. Because I thought she was going to break one, so I got the new one out. But now she squeaks them all, both at random, so I'm sure that eventually the old ball will get squeaked out. But not quite as fast as I thought it would be. Ooh, scrambled eggs. I used to do Kiri eggs for her dinner every day. We were trying to put a little weight on her. So now I'm going to add a little shadow there down into these these white areas. And it might seem odd to add the same color of shadow, but if I'm trying to really make it look like the light is falling, it makes sense that my shadow color would be very similar. It's going to look different when I blend it over the top of this off-white anyway. But look how little paint I have on my brush though, guys. Okay, this is key. Like, my brush makes a natural point, and like there's just this tiny bit of moisture coming off my brush. Like, that's the key to using sables. If you're having trouble with these sable brushes, you got too much paint, or your paint's too thick. Now what I can do when I come in here is, again, I can do brush strokes in the direction of the fur growth, and I can emphasize the shadows like between these lighter strands. That's looking a little more natural. And I can reinforce this more. So a little bit of a point where the fur kind of dips down by the tail there, so I can shade that. And putting a little bit of shadow in here makes this fur not all look exactly the same, right? Gives it a little variation, which is, you know, in the wild, in nature, out under the light, it would have. So now this looks far more organic. And we've emphasized our shadows again. I really like the sunlit look on this leg. Like, this has a great look to it. Yep. It's about time for me to start wrapping it up. Kiri has happily stayed a happy dog through the entire stream. When I use this color, I'll probably use it to shade underneath this jewelry as well. So that's looking good. Let me get some white, though. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit lighter on this fur down here. And I'm going to actually use the glaze, the puddle of glaze that I have, and just add a little bit. You bet, Scrying Eye. I'll see you this afternoon on my D&D stream. For those who are interested in my Patreon and interested in my brush unloading video for next month, patreon.com/paintingbig is where I live on the Patreon. I don't mind a quick question, Vimanaqua. I don't have the model in front of me, so... Is it like a slabs of wood kind of shield? What I don't want to get into on this stream is just extended coaching. Val's on my my coaching level for my Patreon, but I just don't want to, like, that. I still want that to stay off stream. So, like, simple questions on models are just fine on this stream. I just don't want to go in and do extended coaching over the course of several days, because that's a Patreon level, and it's not what this stream is for. So now I'm just touching up a little bit, just along the very edges here, wherever I think the light would hit a little bit stronger, to bring that out. So that, once again, that varies up this fur a little bit. Makes it look like some parts of this fur are closer or lighter, getting more light than other parts of the fur. And I like that appearance. I like that a lot. Still makes this a separate color from all the rest of it. But it brings it up lighter and gives it more interesting look. So yeah, shoot Vimanaqua. Make it as simple as you can. And then if I wanted to, I could bring up another highlight on like the very top of her thigh with this really light color that I originally used to do these furs. And again, we're going to drop a bunch of water in it. Boom. All right. We'll see if this is thick enough. I may have made it too thin. Let's see if this is thick enough to do fur. We're just, yeah, a little bit of fur highlight up on the top of that leg. This stream should got his college credit. Hey, Julie Cat, thank you. Yeah, I actually used a leather color to start with, and I mixed it with some pale yellow and white, and got this nice golden lion color, which I kind of wanted. So there is the top of the leg is going to get more. Shield has a skull coming out of it. Want to know what colors I should use to make it look translucent-ish ice? You got to paint it as a gemstone then, V Managua, which would probably mean a pale blue and white. Translucence is weird though, because, you know, technically if it's translucent, you should be able to see the wood of the shield underneath it. So I always think that's kind of like fraught with peril, but I would just do it as a pale blue white crystal, which is going to be difficult enough, really. I did a couple of streams on painting gemstones, both for the rock troll and for the gemstone dragon, which actually I thought about going back to gemstone dragon. There's definitely particular ways. So there we go. So now we got a little bit of highlight here, 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 bringing up these areas just a little bit to make all those muscles stand out really well and give us a really nice haunch. Sweet. Yeah, thanks for the sub. Ishian Loki? Ishan Loki? Ishan Loki? Is Han Loki? I don't know. But it's your name. I'll just call you Loki for short. Welcome. And thanks for the resub. Yeah, I mean, if it's Magic Ice V Managua, then you really want to paint it in a pale blue with white. A lot of white. Pale blue for your shadows. And you probably want to do like some kind of jagged, like kind of pale blue lines going back into the wood, or a glow to make it look like the blue-white skull is coming out of the shield. That's the best I can give you short answer. So I do a glow effect, limited glow effect around the shield, and then I would do white and pale blue. Just doing a little bit of touches here. Didn't do so much texture on this leg, so much as just normal highlighting. I am leaving a little bit of brush stroke here and there to make it look soft and furry. But yeah, anytime you have to do a transparent effect, you're really doing kind of a gemstone effect. V Managua. Oh, I think Kiri's getting restless, guys. Justin, can we find a raid?
Yes, ma'am.
Since we started, you know, not more or less on time, and now it's 5 after, so that's perfect. And we've got a good start on Sphinxy here, on her highlighting her fur, so we'll continue this next time I drag her out. Although next week I'll try to do maybe some more Halloween-y models, just for fun. There we go. So this whole area looks pretty good at this point.
We actually have a Zambies.
Oh, we have a Zambies? Go Pouncer. Awesome, guys. Thanks for coming in. Remember, tomorrow is the AMA and giveaway. Please come and listen to me answer many, 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 many questions. Hopefully it will be educational and fun. So I hope you all have a great day. And for those of you who want to come over and see me this afternoon on Twitch, it's 4:30 p.m. Central Time on twitch.tv/paintingbig. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you guys very much. We have Painting Platinum at 3 o'clock today, and then Reaper Live at 6. So don't forget to come hang out with us as well. Thanks, guys.